Hello guys, this is Ben in Parts, back at you today with episode number 7 of this Cryptid cast series. It's been going really well so far. I've had some amazing feedback. I've covered some cases that even I didn't know an incredible amount about, but once I started doing the reading behind them, they were absolutely fascinating and I absolutely had to discuss them. It was absolutely incredible. And today I've got an especially long-ish episode. It's a real treat because it combines several different cryptids. You've got the mention of one cryptid leading to the mention of another cryptid, which actually leads in via a very circuitous scheme of locations into the mention of another. So let's get started. And today we're going to talk about the Chernobyl Kaptar. But before we talk about the Chernobyl Kaptar, we've got to talk about the Almas. So what is the Almas? The Almas, or Kaptar, is a being, or maybe even a person, species of people, that are meant to be very Bigfoot-like, but at the same time have key differences. The Almasti, plural, are bipedal, are covered with hair, and they don't speak language, or at least they don't speak any language that we can comprehend. They've been described in the local languages as men of the woods, or of wild men, and said to inhabit the Asian mountain regions of the Pamir and the Caucasus, as well as the Mongolian mountain range of the Altai, and other places, and to primarily communicate by grunts and non-verbal communication. And it's not just a recent thing either. If you're assuming it's fake, sightings of the Almas, or Almasti, date back to at least as early as the 14th century, and mostly come from locals, if you can believe that. Not delusional tourists, not people with money to make, but poor, often poverty-stricken locals. But the story goes even further because the Almasti are even said to craft clothes and tools, fairly sophisticated for a set of cryptids, or people said to otherwise be unsophisticated in comparison to us. They're said to make tools, use tools, craft their own primitive clothing. They don't wear much clothing, however, because their bodies are covered all over with thick brown hair, which is sometimes reddish-brown. The face and the hands are uncovered, but the face itself is interesting too. They have a very protuberant brow ridge, a slanting forehead, and a large protruding jaw and flat nose, making them look very ape-like. They're normally 5 feet tall, but the adults are sometimes 6 or 7 feet tall, much like people. And just like people, they can make clothes, tools, and other things. And in fact, Almas is Mongolian for wild man, and Almasti is derived from Russian, showing just how widespread these wild people are, how similar to humans they sometimes can be, and how they look rather like us. They seem closer to us than Bigfoot, which is mostly 7 to 9 feet tall. In fact, they're so allegedly widespread across much of the East and Asia that variations of the name are Almasti, Almasla, Benahwa, and Ochokochi, which translates as the name for a forest spirit in places of the Caucasus such as Azerbaijan and Georgia. So is it possible that the Almas is more of a spiritual presence? Is it possible that it's a jinn, aka a genie, aka a spirit guide, aka a nature spirit, or one of the many other terms that multiple cultures worldwide use to refer to them? Does this explain why Bigfoot and other creatures or people like it haven't been seen so often, haven't had their presence documented, haven't had remains found? It could. Although there were some reports of remains being found, we haven't actually verified any, so that could be an explanation. We don't know. However, it does seem to many people to be a real physical creature, and its main locations are said to be in the Altai Mountains of Mongolia, in the south of the country, and around the Tian Shan Pass, which is close to the Chinese border. They're said to prefer not to interact with humans, but there have been various documented cases of this happening, including the case of Zhana, a female Almas captured by some locals in the Ochamachery district of Abkhazia in the mid-1800s. Eventually domesticated, it's said that she liked to sleep in a hole outside, refused human clothing, knew her name but couldn't speak at all, and much like a chicken, even when out and roaming, always came back, because that's where the food was. She even had children, some of whom survived, whose descendants they still exist to this day. And this brings me to the Chernobyl Kaptar. Because the Chernobyl Kaptar, or snowman, is meant to be a cryptid in the form of a Kaptar, or Almas, but it's a mutated Almas, found in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. As we all know, in 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which was abysmally checked as far as health and safety went, had multiple red flags, had one of its reactors tested. The reactor blew up, scattering a huge radioactive cloud over Belarus, Russia, Ukraine, and much of Europe. There are even some radioactive sheep found in my country to this day. And it's said that the Almas in this region, one or maybe more of them, were mutated by this radiation in some way. Either they were misshapen, either their minds were deformed, but either way, they are said to have been misshapen, deformed, rendered more unstable by the radiation. According to the local law, The Alamos in this region, the Chernobyl Kaptar, is a misshapen black-haired creature which has glowing red eyes and is very hostile to humans. Most reports indicate that Bigfoot, unless provoked, or unless you, say, stumble across its young, is a gentle giant. Unless you threaten it or its young, it doesn't want to be seen, it slinks away, it doesn't want much interaction. But it's said that the Alamos here, the Chernobyl Kaptar, due to being mutated, is a bit like a raging bull. It has an inherent dislike of humans, and it will wage attacks on humans if it sees them. It's said to have glowing red eyes, it's said to be very territorial, it's said to be very hostile, and if you come into its region, it will attack you. It's widely said, in the Chernobyl region of Ukraine, that it's been responsible for several deaths of those entering the exclusion zone illicitly. There are people who go there illegally to try and loot things, to forage things, to, take videos and selfies, to record vlogs, to take things that they can sell on later. And it's said that the Kaptar over the years has actually killed numerous people, and it's widely believed in that region to exist. Locals widely believe that all kinds of paranormal phenomena happens there, and people are said to be very wary of it. The stories, some people have claimed, might be a modern urban legend because the exclusion zone has developed a strong aura of fear around it, and some people think the stories have actually been created by the local authorities to prevent people from entering the radiation zone, to prevent break-ins, to prevent looters, to prevent all kinds of security problems. You must remember that there's radioactive material there, and they don't want that being spread around the country. They don't want contamination happening. They don't want any other kind of disaster that happens due to radiation happening because some particles or some big parts of it have got out. So is it possible that the authorities have spread this around? Yes. There's lots of interesting rumours about Chernobyl. Some people say that ex-Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych used to go there and hunt. He would fly over in his helicopter and shoot animals from a distance. Some people say he would even let humans there loose and hunt them, although I'm not sure about that. In Eastern Europe, during and after the Cold War, many of the leaders operated almost as emperors with completely unchecked power, and so lots of wild rumours spread. Nicolae Ceausescu was a vampire. Viktor Yanukovych hunts people. I don't know how true they are, but given the behaviour of the global elite, we can believe it, but we don't know. But it's interesting that the Chernobyl Kaptar isn't the only cryptid reported from Chernobyl. There have been reports from Chernobyl at that exact same time of the black bird of Chernobyl. Just like what happened in Point Pleasant, West Virginia with Mothman, just before and after the power plant explosion, people there around Chernobyl power plants began to have dreams of a bird with 20-foot wingspan and glowing red eyes. It haunted them in their dreams. There was strange electrical malfunctions. There were strange sightings of this bird seen. And then the reactor exploded. But it gets even more interesting because it's said that this black bird with a 20-foot wingspan and glowing red eyes flew out of the rubble of the reactor when it exploded and started circling around the plant a bit before flying away. Rescuers in helicopters reported seeing this large bird-like creature that looks a lot like Mothman rising up and flying. And some of those rescuers since that time have actually since died. It's not known if that was due to some kind of effect the creature had, but it's notable that the Chernobyl Mothman or Black Bird and the Kaptar came around at the same time. So are they one on the same? Is this some kind of jinn, aka genie, aka demon, or whatever name people use to describe it? Is it somehow linked? Do they somehow know each other? I'm not saying that they go for tea in a cafe, but are they a phenomenon that developed at the same time, or are they separate? Did the blackbird come along in different circumstances? Did the Kaptar already exist in the forests and then become deformed? We don't know, but this is a fascinating series of events. You've got the Alamos in the forests and the mountains, the Alamos that links to the forests of Chernobyl. From the forests of Chernobyl, you get to Point Pleasant, Virginia, and the Mothman. It's an incredible, fascinating series of links. But what do you guys think? Is it a mixture of urban legend, myth, or misidentification? I think there's honestly something to it. I mean, you've got all kinds of stories of sightings, you've got all kinds of stories of interactions, you've got all kinds of stories that are so widespread that there's got to be some basis to them. But what do you guys think? Post me a comment in the comment section below if you've seen one of these things or know someone who has. If you have any additional information to share with me, I would love that, and stay tuned for the next episode.